So we're in July now, and recently there's been a new BookTube event announced by Jim over at Mystery and Mayhem. Great channel. Highly recommend you checking that out if you haven't already. I can't imagine anyone who is checking this video out that wouldn't probably have already checked out Jim's videos. Anyway, he's an expert on all kinds of detective stories, especially private eye fiction, I would say, as well as westerns and other genres. And he created this event, PI July, and where people and he made it very easy, kind of basic criteria, although I don't think he would care if you, whatever kind of private eye novel you read, as long as you read something this month. But the two kind of prompts are to read a private eye novel or a short story, series of short stories or whatever, pre-1970s PI detective fiction and post-1970s up to modern day private eye detective fiction. And I'll link to his channel and you can check out his criteria video, his announcement video. I'm not officially a co-host. I'm not officially joining, really. I'm just gonna, I love detective novels, and whether it's Golden Age British mysteries or Ellery Queen, similar type of whodunits from America, from stateside. And I also really enjoy private eye detective fiction. Long-time fan. And so I'm going to show a few of the books that I have here just to kind of join in the spirit of this event. And hopefully you'll see something interesting that you might like. Some of these will be well known to you. I wanted to just mention that I spent some time talking about one series from Erle Stanley Gardner, the Cool and Lamb detective novels. Very nice and fun series by Erle Stanley Gardner, better known for writing Perry Mason, creating Perry Mason, and of course there's 80 plus novels of those. There are 30 of these novels, Donald Lamb and Bertha Cool, kind of Mutt and Jeff sort of detective, private detectives. Lamb is the detective, the narrator and the main character. I'm not going to talk a lot about these because I did a whole video a while back going through this series. This is one of my very cool looking little pocketbook editions. Highly recommend these. There's of course usually a legal bent, as it was Erle Stanley Gardner's kind of penchant. He liked to focus on legal issues and loopholes. And Donald Lamb, the detective in this one, is a kind of former disbarred lawyer, so he has a real sharp legal brain. Really fun series, great dialogue, slick writing, and it fits in the private eye mold very well, I think. So I highly recommend those. I'm not going to talk about them much here, as I already did so earlier. Now, embarrassingly, I've read a lot of the great Raymond Chandler, his Philip Marlowe novels and stories, etc. I don't happen to have any of them here with me in Japan, though. And I don't quite know how that turned out that way. But I do know I have this lovely massive tome, the Black Lizard Big Book of Black Mask Stories, edited by Otto Penzler. And there is just a ton of good stuff in here. It's got double columns of stories with some great art inside, and taken right from the Black Mask pulps. And let's see if I can find them. Right, so you've got introductions by Otto Penzler, and lots and lots and lots of text. This is indeed a big book. I believe it clocks in at, 1,116 pages, including acknowledgments. And this has a whole bunch of stuff in it. Got a cool front page there, and lots of stories from all sorts of noir writers and pulp detective writers who got their start or contributed to Black Mask. So we got Frederick Brown, George Harmon Cox, or Coates, I'm not quite sure how you pronounce his name, Frederick Nebel, Lester Dent, the creator and chief writer of Doc Savage, but this is not a Doc Savage story. It's another story of his. It's got the complete original magazine run of Dashiell Hammett's The Maltese Falcon in this. So it differs. It was changed by Hammett for novel form. So that's the original serialized form. We got Wyatt Blassingame and Talmadge Powell and Richard Sale. And what else? Who else do we have in here? Carol John Daly. And we got, who else? Some other names here. William Campbell Galt, Brett Halliday. I didn't do a rundown of this. Norvell Page, U.B. Cave. Lots of really well-known pulp writers, I think. Horace McCoy. Ray Cummings has a story in here. C.M. Kornbluth. Beer Bottle Polka. He has a crime story in here. Cornell Woolrich, of course, very famous writer. And we have Try the Girl by Raymond Chandler. Try the Girl, the Raymond Chandler story in this collection, seems to be a Philip Marlowe story. Apparently, according to the Penzler's introduction, it was the last story that Chandler wrote for Black Mask. At any rate, this is a massive tome. You couldn't go wrong with this. There's also another just general pulp collection, as well as several others I have here. One day I'll go through them all. 1,100 pages of hard-boiled private detective and noirish stories there. Now, speaking of Dashiell Hammett, I have a couple of his here with me. I don't know why I don't have more Chandler. It just blows my mind because I've read most of his novels and he's one of my favorite writers, period, let alone favorite private detective writers. But I do have most of Hammett. So I have this very nice vintage collection of the Continental Op short stories. And the Continental Op is kind of a slightly portly, everyman sort of detective, but he's tougher than tough as nails. Hardcore operative for a larger detective agency, getting involved with all sorts of issues, all sorts of tough cases, crime. Of course, Continental Op, who's never named, that's why he's called the Continental Op, short for operative, traveling around solving different cases that he's been assigned to from his agency. Also starred in, I believe, 2 Hammett novels, The Dane Curse and Red Harvest. And these are 7 short stories. And they're fairly lengthy short stories. They're probably more, novelette length. And they're very good. Recommend those. And of course I have this nice leather-bound Amaranth Press edition of Dashiell Hammett. 5 complete novels. It's similar to the ones that Avenel Press put out, like the ones I have over here. If you can see my Mr. Moto and some Miss Marple and Poirot stories, etc. I have a couple more of those. I have an Ellery Queen one here too. It's similar to that, but it's leather bound. It's got some nice end papers here. Pretty simple ones, but I've had this for years and years and years and years and years, and so it's maybe not, it's a little bit faded in some cases, but it's got some nice, its color is faded a bit, but some kind of gilt text block there. And this has Red Harvest, The Dane Curse, again, the 2 novels starring the Continental Op, who's never named, but we can link from his narration that it's the same guy, plus the very famous Maltese Falcon, The Glass Key, and The Thin Man. Now, last year I read The Thin Man. I'm very familiar with the movie Thin Man series. The Thin Man novel is a slightly different, but fairly close to the first movie starring William Powell as Nick Charles and Myrna Loy as his wife Nora. That's a fabulous novel too, but I don't think I'll read any Hammett other than perhaps a Continental Op story this month. But got to show those off. I have Hammett. If you're a private eye fan and you want to check out the history of the genre, you got to have some Chandler, you got to have some Hammett, and you have to have some Ross Macdonald. And I have several Ross Macdonald novels here with me. I have several that I've read that I don't have. I've read The Drowning Pool and some others. So going in kind of order of publication, I have The Moving Target, which is from 1949, and Ross Macdonald's detective is Lou Archer. Now, if you ever saw the Paul Newman movie Harper, Paul Newman is playing Lou Harper, but essentially he's playing Lou Archer. But for whatever reason, I'm assuming because Newman was coming off of 2 successful movies that started with the letter H, HUD and Hombre, a wonderful adaptation of an Elmore Leonard Western, Hombre. He decided to change the name from Archer to Harper. That's an excellent PI detective movie with a fantastic cast. And it's based off of, I forgot which, I don't think, it might be this novel, but it's based off of one of the Lou Archer novels. But that's why there's some cognitive dissonance there, that why is he called Harper when he's actually being adapted from Ross Macdonald? Anyway, moving target. Lou Archer is he's a little less sarcastic, perhaps, of a narrator than Raymond Chandler's Philip Marlowe. Raymond Chandler had a magnificent turn of phrase, excellent with use of simile and metaphor, and those are extremely entertaining reads and beautifully written. Macdonald's Archer novels are also very well written, with a real sense of place in Los Angeles, but a little more spare, I guess, a little more interested in the psychology of the characters. I have that one. I also have The Barbarous Coast. The Barbarous Coast, and again, this is what are some of these editions? This is a Bantam edition, The Barbarous Coast, and The Barbarous Coast was published originally in 1956. I don't believe this version was, but that was when the book first came out. Usually, Lou Archer's cases are very embroiled with domestic situations and, lots of complicated, messy relationships that he has to dig through to find out, what's going on. And there's always some bodies piling up. And Lou Archer sees his way, kind of coldly and clearly to the end of the case. We have, speaking of cases, the Galton case. The Galton case is from 1959. The Barbarous Coast was 1956, by the way. And then we have The Chill. Now, this is a little later in the series run. This is from 1964. Got a pretty cool little cover with a spider there raining blood, venom. I'm not quite sure what that is. I'll just give you a little sense of this one from the back blurb. Archer knew he shouldn't have taken the case, but Alex Kincaid seemed so desperate. Kincaid's loving new bride, Dolly, had just inexplicably walked out on him, leaving Kincaid more than a little fearful for her sanity and her safety. So Archer reluctantly agreed to help Kincaid find his wife. But what he found instead was enough to send a chill down anyone's spine, a fresh new corpse and evidence linking Dolly not only to the murder, but to a series of others dating back to before she was even born. I guess that's why there's the Black Widow on the cover. Pretty interesting. And then the last one I have here, and it's in really great shape. It's, at least as far as the cover goes, The Far Side of the Dollar. And this one is from 1965. It's kind of an interesting cover. I'm not quite sure what to make of the cover there. This appears to be... I guess this is is this a picture of Macdonald? I don't know, on the back there. I've never seen what he looks like. The only thing that is that it's a little bit, faded inside there for some reason, but the cover is in really nice shape. And this is again, a Bantam edition. So that's all the Ross Macdonald novels I have here. I also have, speaking of some of the earlier, operators in the genre, we have Anthony Boucher. I don't think it's Boucher, could be. Anthony Boucher, who was, I believe, also a literary critic. And he wrote the Fergus O'Brien is his detective, and this is The Case of the Solid Key. Right? Blackmailer, fraud, and all-around crook, Louis Jordan deserved to die, and he did violently. But Private Eye Fergus O'Brien had a secret assignment tied to Jordan, and that meant he had to expose the killer nobody wanted to find. The glamour of Hollywood and the dazzle of high-powered detection make this one of Anthony Boucher's best and most deceptive bafflers. Anyway, that's a fun one. that I picked up. This is a pyramid book. It's got a little, what's kind of cool is you see the corpse in the reflection on the doorknob there with the key in it. And then, I guess tangentially, I mean, I would kind of more class, Rex Stout's Nero Wolfe character with his legman Archie Goodwin, a little more in the more classic mystery vein, but certainly they're detectives, private detectives. They collect money, take cases, and Archie Goodwin, the kind of sarcastic, freewheeling narrator of the stories, certainly is a regular type of PI. And I have a couple of them here. Black Orchids, with an introduction by Robert Bloch, right? And this is a Bantam. Then I have a pyramid with a very interesting logo on the up here, and this one's in also really good condition. And this is the Rubber Band with kind of a photo cover collage there. And both of those, let's see, this one's from '64, the Rubber Band, and this is a newer edition of Black Orchids. And actually, Black Orchids, there's two novellas in here. There's Black Orchids and Cordially Invited to Meet Death. So it's not a complete novel. There's two novellas, it looks like, or short novels. And this one was originally published in 1942, but this edition is much later. So Nero Wolfe, good reads for sure. I've only read a handful of those, but I like what I've read so far. And then we get into more, I guess, bruiser kind of hardcore, hard-boiled detectives, and that's Mickey Spillane's Mike Hammer. And I have some of the later ones. I have, which I believe is number 8, The Snake from 1964. Hard-hitting Mike Hammer, punch and shoot first and ask questions later sort of guy. And then that's followed by The Twisted Thing from 1966. And this is number 9 in the series, which was continued on for quite a while after the 50s and 60s, and has had since newer ones published, written by Max Allan Collins, who is a Mike Hammer and Mickey Spillane expert, as well as a great writer in several other series. And this is a Signet edition, this one, and I believe The Snake is also a Signet. So, again, this one has a nice painted cover, a painted picture of a sexy come hither femme fatale, whereas this one is just one of those old photo covers, a naked girl in silhouette, I guess. Anyway, here's Hammer betting, brawling, snarling. Here's Spillane holding back till the very last line to explode the power punch. And then there's a quote from the Charlotte Observer, Mike Hammer in a case which shows him at his best. Spillane is a master in compelling you always to read the next page, the New York Times. So, I've watched the various Mike Hammer movies and TV series. I haven't read many of the books, so I haven't got around to these two yet. I might dip into those as we go here. And as we get into the 60s, I want to talk a little bit about John D. Macdonald, no relation to Ross Macdonald, and his series about Travis McGee. Now, Travis McGee talks about himself as a salvage expert, living in the boat, the Busted Flush, down in Florida near Miami, and he gets involved in various cases for a percentage of what he salvages, essentially. But to all intents and purposes, these are very straight down the line in a lot of ways private eye novels. Now, they're very interesting and they're very unique in their own way. I don't want to sell them short. They're great, actually. I went through a phase several years back, maybe 15, 20 years back, where I read a scad of these and was really, taken with them. A nice mix of kind of political musings on the part of McGee, two-fisted action, kind of sexy love stuff without going overboard, and just really interesting detective novels. There's a series of 21 of these. Now, for some reason, I have two copies here of Nightmare in Pink. I don't know why I have two copies of this one. This is actually the second novel, I believe, in the series. And this one has the cooler cover, so this is probably the one that I would keep. But this one's cover is not nearly as good. But for some reason, I have a couple of those. I know I have several more, but I don't have them all with me here. I have, I believe, the fourth one, The Quick Red Fox. I believe this one's set in Hollywood, away from McGee's home in Florida. And this one has, I got both of these at the Smith Family Bookstore, so years ago, I guess. Smith Family Bookstore is an excellent large bookstore in Eugene, Oregon, near the University of Oregon, and it's massive. I haven't been there for years, but I used to live in Eugene, and I missed that store. That was a great store. Then I have Bright Orange for the Shroud. I believe this is number 6. Again, as you can tell with the Travis McGee novels, there's always a color in them. That's kind of the gimmick there. And here's a picture of Mr. Macdonald on the back. Of course, he wrote lots of other thrillers and crime novels, including Cape Fear. And then we have, the last one I have here with me is The Girl in the Plain Brown Wrapper. This is number 10, I believe, in the series. And then there's kind of the depiction of Travis McGee there on the back part, as well as another picture of Mr. Macdonald. Now, another series I was big into years ago, and I still read some of them again to go back and enjoy them, because I really like the earlier ones especially, was Robert B. Parker's Spenser novels. This is the 5th one, The Judas Goat. This is not a typical Spenser novel. Most of them are set in Boston or other parts of the United States. This is the one, I believe, the only one to my knowledge that was set overseas. Spenser is this tough former Korean War vet who's got his PI license. He's a gourmet cook. He's excellent with the wisecrack. He's done some boxing, and he's a tough guy for sure with the proverbial heart of gold. And he's assisted by his I used to hesitate to use the word frenemy, because they're basically friends from the first or second book on. A mob enforcer, I guess you could call him, named Hawk, black guy with the very stylish, always super tough, well contained. And the Spenser and Hawk relationship is key to most of these novels and has been aped and copied in other series, including the Elvis Cole series, where he has the more amoral sidekick Joe Pike. And there's tons of those kinds of relationships of the two, the kind of yin-yang hero and his pal. And Hawk in this one is hired by Spenser to come join him. Basically, this one's quite different. Wealthy man who's now a cripple because his family was killed and he was rendered paraplegic in a terrorist bombing in London years before. And he's a very rich man, and he hires Spenser. He's found some information, and he hires Spenser to track down the people responsible for the death of his wife and child in this bombing, and hires Spenser to go track him. He wants him killed, basically, and Spenser, who has a moral code, doesn't like the idea of being a straight assassin. Hawk is never worried about that kind of thing. Anyway, as things turn out, most of them end up getting killed. But so Spenser flies to London, and then tries to contact the group and tries to winnow them out and find out where. They end up following them, I believe, to Amsterdam, and then they get involved with in Copenhagen, and then eventually in Montreal for the Montreal Olympics. And there's a massive, one of the terrorist henchmen is this huge guy, and Hawk and Spenser end up going mano a mano with them, both taking on this giant guy in a massive fight at the end. This is a globe-trotting, hard-charging, very fun adventure, and very atypical Spenser novel, but they're always a lot of fun. I highly recommend, especially like the first dozen or so in the series. They still maintain their entertainment value as the series goes on, but they get a little bit complacent, I would say, with a lot of talk about Pearl the Wonder Dog. They're Spenser and his girlfriend Susan's Labrador, and they get a little cozy after a while. Still deliver some fun here and there, of course, and the cases are never super twisty, except for maybe a few of the first ones. But again, there's a reason why Parker was approached to complete Poodle Springs, a unfinished Raymond Chandler novel, and especially early in the 70s. This comes from 1978. And, I believe this first one, the God Wolf manuscript, was published in 1973. So in those early days, Parker was really focused on kind of making some interesting, lean, and serious detective novels. Highly recommend that series. Okay, this is running a little long, so let's try to finish up with the last few things that I have. A couple of series maybe that are a little less well known. I have a couple of these Stone Angel novels by Marvin Albert. This is Pete Sawyer. Pierre Ange Sawyer. He's half French, half American, basically, and he's kind of a World War II vet who's remained on the French Riviera and solves cases, and these are quite good. I have The Midnight Sister and The Zigzag Man. Okay, and those two, this was the 6th in the series, which I believe had 9 books or maybe a little more, and this was the 8th, The Zigzag Man. And I'll read you a little bit off the back of The Midnight Sister just to give you a little sense of the hero. Half French and half American, the son of a noble resistance fighter and a brave American war hero, Riviera resident and PI Pete Sawyer is undeniably attracted to danger and style, whether he's flirting with the business end of a 45 or admiring the charms of a beautiful woman. He's in his element. Confident, with cool to spare, his international savoir-faire makes him at home in every situation, business, pleasure, or anything in between. Anyway, he's not quite as pretentious as all of that. These are fun novels. I haven't read them for a while, but they're quite good. I know Jim at Mystery Mayhem talked about several of these series, including the Toby Peters mysteries by Stuart M. Kaminsky. And these are kind of PI novels, usually set in Hollywood or other places in the United States with real historical characters. Now, judging from that title, Think Fast, Mr. Peters, you can end the kind of Mr. Peter Lorre-esque look there. This is revolving around the Peter Lorre, Mr. Moto series when it's being filmed in Hollywood, and basically someone, a Peter Lorre imitation or Peter Lorre lookalike is murdered, and Toby Peters gets involved in the case. So this one looks pretty fun. I haven't read a lot of the Toby Peters novels. This is Kaminsky right there. Looks like a friendly fellow. There's quite a few of them. This one was published, right? So you can see a list. It's from Mysterious Press, I believe, this book. And there's a whole bunch of Toby Peters novels if you get into those. This one was published in 1987. Then I have a series, they call him a soft-boiled gumshoe. I don't think that's quite fair. He's tough when he needs to be. But this is the series of John Denson series, a John Denson mystery by Richard Hoyt. This is 30 for a Harry. This is the second one. I'm positive I have the first one, Decoy, somewhere here, but I couldn't track it down to show you. Anyway, this is a Seattle-based PI. Later he moves into Oregon, somewhere, to the east of Portland. And he has a sometimes partner, an Indian Native American shaman called Willie Prettybird. And they get involved in various cases. And there's a humorous vein to these, although this first one's a little more serious. And there's several others. I have some more on Kindle. I think there's at least 11 or so of these. This is the second one. Then I have this one here, which was number 5, Who? This is involving like a spotted owl controversy and various shenanigans with the timber industry. There's some topical stuff in here as well. There's some novels that talk about Siskiyou, or also known as Fish Story, is involving fishing rights for Native Americans, etc. So quite interesting kind of plots and story background. And again, this one's set in the Pacific Northwest. And then we have one that's really fun, and it's called Bigfoot. And again, a John Denson mystery. And this is about, supposed sighting of Bigfoot Is it really Bigfoot? A Russian scientist, a beautiful Russian scientist, comes over to investigate, and John Denson is hired to be her guide, along with Willie Prettybird and some other friends. And that's quite an interesting story, and it's a hoot and a half with a lot of, a lot of Bigfoot lore woven into it. So, and he's written some spy novels as well, Richard Hoyt, and he maybe is better known for his spy novels. But I like his John Denson detective novels. There's a real kind of laid-back, kind of neo-hippie vibe with Denson, which maybe earns him the soft-boiled appellation. But he can deliver the action when he needs to, and there's always an interesting kind of romantic angle in there, and like I said, some interesting local politics sort of hovering in the background. But he always serves up a kind of involved and clever mystery. Now I got one more series and then one standalone I'm going to end with. So I have these. Dan Simmons, of course, is much more famous for his science fiction and fantasy and horror novels. Of course, Caring and Comfort, the Hyperion series of books, science fiction ones, The Terror, the South Pole horror novel, Song of Kali. The guy is very talented and multifaceted with different genres. And he wrote this series of 3 books about P.I. Joe Kurtz, and they're excellent. I really recommend them. This is the 3rd one. I have the other 2 somewhere, not here with me for some reason. First one is called Hard Case. The second one is Hard as Nails, and this one is Hard Freeze. And P.I. Joe Kurtz is a real tough guy. This is a P.I. thriller, really. They're kind of a mix of the 2. So just to give you a little taste of Joe Kurtz, who's a real hardcore sort of fun character, I'll read the back blurb a little bit. A Reason to Kill. Joe Kurtz, former investigator and convicted felon, is on parole. But his years in Attica for snuffing the mob killers of his beautiful partner didn't make his old haunts any safer. Back on the streets, he's already marked by a local mafia don with unfinished business. And then going on from there, right? Going after a really pretty nasty killer in this one, a contract killer. And he has a beautiful, another Don, the Don's beautiful mafiosa daughter, connected daughter, has a thing for Kurtz, and there's all sorts of kind of dangerous undercurrents in these books. I highly recommend seeking these out. These are the Joe Kurtz novels by Dan Simmons. If you're a fan of his work in other genres, you might not be surprised to know he's pretty adept in the hard-boiled detective genre as well. And the last one I have is a detective novel written by a real former detective, and that's Joe Gores. Joe Gores apparently was a private detective in real life before he turned to writing. This is not a series novel, although I think he has written several series novels. But this one is one-off as far as I'm aware. It's called Dead Man. And this one was also published by Mysterious Press, and it came out in 1993. And this one is more of a thriller, I guess. Once Eddie Dane, who is the private detective in question, once Eddie Dane had a life, a beautiful wife, a happy young son, and a thriving business catching softcore bad guys by computer. Then he hung on to an odd-looking case and made a mysterious enemy, one whose calling cards were 2 men with shotguns. Now Eddie is reborn as a dead man. So he was wounded, his wife and son killed, sadly. Known by the single name of Dane, he pumps up his body and his psyche as he follows a trail of sweaty white-collar crime to the steamy Louisiana bayous. Here in this torrid landscape is a woman on the run who can lead him to what he wants more than anything, the man who took everything from Eddie Dane. Pretty cool setup, huh? I think this one will be a good read. I don't know if I'll get to it this month. Last but certainly not least is this, my one and only in my possession at the moment, Mike Shane mystery. This is Mermaid on the Rocks with the very nice painted cover there. Again, this is by Brett Halliday. I'm about a couple chapters into this one. I'll be for sure reading this one this month for PI July. It's great so far. Lots and lots of novels written by Halliday, the Mike Shane books. I just happen to have this one. It's got a little, little image of Mike Shane up there. Apparently he's a red-haired detective. Scuba Dooba. This one has quite an interesting start. I'll talk more about that in a moment, but there's a reason why there's a mermaid in the title. Let's just put it that way. I'll just read you the back, just kind of get you the sense of what we're looking at here, although the writing is of quite a high caliber so far. Doing what comes naturally. The moment Kitty slipped out of her bikini, Mike knew he couldn't say no. Sure, he was on vacation, but she was a golden-haired charmer in trouble, with a way of getting down to bare facts that he couldn't resist. It wasn't until he discovered her bare facts covered everything from hot Spanish treasure to cold-blooded murder that he realized resistance was the better part of valor. Only by then, it was much too late. Now, this was published in 1967, and it seems this edition is from 1967. This is is this a Dell? Yeah, Dell Mystery, an original volume. Pretty nice condition. Sadly, it has this kind of clip off the top edge. I don't know why. You can't really see it much when you're just looking at the cover like that. And illustrated by McGinnis. Yes, good. We have a Robert McGinnis cover. Pretty unmistakable. I was going to say it was probably McGinnis. I'm glad to be able to confirm it. He did a lot of these covers for Mike Shane as well as other books of the time, and he was just an amazing artist. Anyway, this one should be a lot of fun. I will definitely be finishing this one for this month. Anyway, that does it for my mini shelf tour of my PI hardboiled or PI detective novels, what I have here with me. I have several more, of course, not with me, which doesn't help anybody in any way, but I hope you enjoyed that little run through. I'm sorry it took quite a long time. Thank you if you watched all the way to the end. I will see you later in the month with the review of this Mermaid on the Rocks Mike Shane novel, and maybe something else of a later post-70s vintage that I'll try to get to comply with the 2 prompts for PI in July. Until then, please check out the other channels who are running this event, especially Jim at Mystery and Mayhem. Michael K. Vaughan is involved, Steve Donoghue, a lot of the usual great BookTube suspects. So check them out, and I hope you get a chance to read some fun PI fiction in July. Till then, till the next time, take care, and I'll see you later.